Yeah.
Okay.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'd like to call this meeting to order for the Franklin County Industrial Development Agency. Before we begin, I would like to just read this statement, which we have to do, as I understand it, because of regulations. So it's, in theory, it's designed to let people know if they're attending our meeting by Zoom, that they're still allowed to make personal comments at the appropriate time that they wish to make. So I'll read it, and this will get into our meeting for today.
Everybody can hear Jim okay?
Yes.
We can now that you quit fooling with the mic.
So,
A reminder that today's meeting is being recorded and live streamed. Members of the public are welcome to comment during the two public comment sections of our meeting, which usually is at the very beginning of the meeting. We invite the public to make whatever comments they wish to make. To do so, please click the raise your hand button in the Zoom app that you're using to let us know that you would like to address the board. And when acknowledged, please turn your video on and state your name for the record. And I think that's sufficient enough, Jerry?
yeah,
Okay. Again, I would like to welcome everybody to our February meeting. Special thank you for Donna Kassane. Thank you for attending and being with us. Get an idea of all the other things that we do here. Maria, go ahead. We'll have, Archie, you had your hand up. I'm sorry.
No, I just wondering what the hell Steve was doing, but
You're fooling around with a microphone. Okay, now that we have the call to order, I'd like you to take the roll.
Sherry Boye. You have to unmute yourself, Sherry. Sherry Boye.
Present.
James Ellis.
Present.
Stephen Erman.
present.
Madeline Flurry. Here. Archie McKee.
present.
Nate Manette.
Here.
We need to show we have one vacant on the board. Also present, Jeremy Evans, Maria Bourgeois, and Donna Kassane, Franklin County Manager.
Thank you. Now, if there are any public comments, we'll entertain those. There being none, then we'll move on to accepting the agenda. Are there any changes to the agenda or anything else that has to be added to the agendas that you all received by email? Very good. Then we'll now go on to the approval of the previous meeting minutes of January the 11th. You all received those in the email likewise. Are there any additions,
Yep.
corrections, deletions? I'm sorry. If not, we'll assume that the copies you received by email are sufficient. Therefore, we will accept a motion for approval of those meetings of January the 11th, 2023. Motion?
I'll make the motion.
Motion by Maria, second by Steve. Comments?
It's okay, I got that one.
There being no comments, we will go ahead and assume that the question has been moved. All in favor of accepting the minutes of January the 11th, 2023, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. Now, before we get into the committee reports, which is appropriate for what I'd like to do now, you all received a copy in your emails of the appointments that I continue to make to the committees that we have as basically standing committees. Let me point out a couple of quick things to you that I think is very important. This was not just fill in the blank type stuff. I tried to use as much of my instincts as possible in considering the background and also the previous work experience and the present work experience of all of those who've been appointed to these committees. I'm very happy that we're able to staff each of these committees the way we have, because they're going to be a valuable addition to what we're trying to do in our mission as an IDA. I'd like to just quickly flip the page and look at the committees as they're indicated. For agriculture and agribusiness, I don't know what to do with that right now until we find out what Justice is going to do, or what is going to happen with Justice's seat. And we still have to fill that vacancy. With downtown revitalization and entrepreneurship, I appointed Sherry for a good reason. If she gets into, if we get into further discussion about our revitalization programs in the three major villages in Franklin County, Tupper, Saranac Lake, and Malone, this would be a good place for Sherry to be sort of in on the ground in terms of making whatever suggestions are necessary, excuse me, from a banking perspective, as to what should be done in terms of proposals that we've received from each of the communities and they have approved. Let's go on to Governance and Anti-Harassment Committee. Madeline Fleury is the chair of that committee. Her previous work with, in her industry work that she did before she retired, I think admirably suits her for that. I'm sitting in because of any problems that may arise because of harassment. It will be important for me to be there as chair of the IDA for final solution to whatever the committee, the IDA wishes to do in that response. So there's still a vacancy there. Audit and Finance, I'm very comfortable with the people we have there. Archie's experience as a county auditor and his previous experience in the field of business admirably suits him there. And with Madeline, who also had in her previous work life a lot of worry about the bottom line, I'm sure, in terms of at least her section of what was done in her industry. Economic Development, Steve Ehrman as chair, because of his previous experience as the economist at the APA, I think gives him admirable background in terms of economic development, because we folded into economic development infrastructure and other items that deal with us trying to get businesses involved in Franklin County and assisting businesses in Franklin County to locate here. Nate Manette, because of his present experience and his work in business, I think is a good fit. I'm there to be the third person, and depending again on what happens with the seat that Justice is wrestling with right now, I may not continue in that one, but right now that's where I'm at. The Loan Committee, again, I think because of the two people that are there, Nate and Sherry, with Nate as a chair, I'm happy with his experience, and I think that's a key committee, because you can't get there from here unless you can put the money and the bucks behind the proposals that may be necessary. And Sherry, we all know, her banking experience has been admirable in terms of what she can bring to that committee. So that's why I appointed the people that I appointed to the committees. If there are any real, how should I say it, any real ulcers on the part of anybody for being on a particular committee, please, let's go offline and let me know either by telephone, all of my phone number you all have, or you can send me an email and we'll see what we can do to juggle things around to the best of our ability. But the way we've tried to set this up, and I'll be quite frank, this is going to be a working organization and everybody gets a piece of the action. So you can't just sit there and fill a seat. We're going to have people that want to work, and I'm very happy with the people that we presently have. And I thank all of you for the work you've done and the work we're going to do in the future. So, having said that, I'm assuming there may not be any committee reports, but we'll go through them. Governance Committee reports?
I have no report at this time.
Okay. Audit and Finance?
The Audit and Finance Committee did have a scheduled meeting to discuss the compensation packages for employees and staff. But Jeremy made a recommendation that we wait to see what an H&R consultant might have to offer. And he has spoken with that party, and that party is developing, I believe, a long-range plan for us to review and consider. And once he receives that, he's going to share that with Madeline, myself, and I believe Sherry. So that once we receive that, we can reschedule that meeting.
Thank you. And just a point, Archie, the committees, as you may have noticed, have been changed about in terms of who is going to be on the committee and what's happened. So you had the 2022 committee scheduled for the meeting, but I jumped in and did the 2023 appointments. Not saying that there are people who shouldn't be there. Question is to make sure that we have at least the number of people, requisite committee members to carry out.
Yes, I know that you stole Sherry from me. And that's fine.
I wanted her for myself.
But Jeremy thought with her experience, she might be able to add something for us. So
And
that's
I
why.
think I think that's a good point, Archie, that, you know, any of these committees that feel they have to have some other expertise. I take no pride in authorship, so if you want to invite somebody in to take part in a committee meeting, just remember, rule of 4, you can't have any more than 3 people, because then it becomes a public meeting and it's outside of the public meeting law.
Yeah, no, I was just following Jeremy's suggestion.
Right, oh yeah, I'm just reminding everybody else so that if you do have a committee meeting and you're going to invite people in, it might be necessary for you to take a look at the numbers that are going to be at the committee meeting to make sure we don't run afoul of the public meeting law.
You just got to let us know so we can notice it properly. That's all.
Yep. Let's see, Agriculture Committee, not much going on there, except I'm happy to report that one of our clients in Tupper Lake, the hub, which is the farm to market place, received a $500,000 grant to work with farms hand in glove, and also to help develop value-added agriculture value. In other words, it's not only enough to grow it, how do you put more value in it once you grow it? Now, I think that'd be an interesting thing. Let's see, economic development, Steve?
Let me just say that everybody on the board received an email from Jeremy, which transmitted an email from Matt Boir at CDC Real Estate concerning the Bombay plant. And, you know, what he thought was a best way for us to sell the property if we decide to do that, and his estimates of what fair market value would be of that plant. And I think I'll stop there and just pass it over to Jeremy. But let me just add that, you know, the committee will be, you know, we're learning of this as this develops. The committee will be meeting on this, and we'll be getting further information back to the board. Let me just pass it to Jeremy to see if he wants to add anything to what I just said.
I'll add more later in my CEO report and old business
Okay,
on that
sounds
topic.
Yeah, and except for that, administratively, I would like to send that particular topic to the Economic Development Committee after Jeremy's explanation, to have them come up with a recommendation to the full board.
Okay.
Loan Committee, anything going on?
Nothing to report. I do plan on holding a meeting here shortly, but nothing to report right now.
Good, thanks, Nate. And Downtown Revitalization and Entrepreneurship, a brand new one, basically one of the committees that we've sort of folded in with other activities. As you know, entrepreneurship, I think, is a place to be in the future, helping entrepreneurs to get started. Anything, Sherry, for your committee yet? Okay. Let's go on now to the treasurer's report.
So today I will provide the treasurer's report. It will be brief. Our CFO is not here, as you can tell, but there's a couple things. You received the monthly financials in the board packet, and you separately received the investment report on Friday. And I guess I would make sure to point that out is that if you look at our cash balance compared to a year ago, it's very low. And that there's a big change, but I thought I'd point that out because just as a reminder that last month, Paul invested some of our money into the Treasury Direct program. So that's why there's that big drop in our checking account balance. So I just wanted to remind everybody of that. And that's, as far as the IDA is concerned, that was really the only highlight I wanted to mention. And then if there's any specific questions, do my best to answer them or have Paul get back to you.
I just have a comment on it. We used to have the reports where it went from month to month, not like the year previous month. Can we get that added back on where it goes from like, you have February, which is January, I'm assuming, and then have the December, so you can see the side by side?
Side by side for the month previous?
Yeah, because it used to do that, I thought. When I go back and look at some of the other ones. Just makes it a little easier to follow.
Okay. Yeah, I'll bring that up.
So you're saying the second column here, instead of being February 3rd twice, should be January, whatever the date was.
So it's like using the previous month comparison plus the previous year comparison, I think is
Yeah,
what matters.
that's how it used to be, I thought. You had all three.
See if he has a explanation for that or why he took it out. I wrote that down.
Thank you.
And one of the other things in the report, under line 1301, I'm sorry, we put in our business parks with their present, I guess, current value. Is that correct?
Well, we just separated them out because
Right.
they're all
Jumbled
combined
together.
into
Yep.
one. So he separated them out.
But my question is the values indicated are, as of right now, that's what we have left to sell, 86,000, for example, in Chateauguay, or 58,000 worth in Tupper?
It may not, those aren't necessarily market value for
Okay.
the land itself. It's more of a accounting calculation that he worked through using some previous data from past appraisals.
Uh-huh.
And just to make sure that the value is captured accurately for the audit.
Very
I
good.
can't explain the actual calculation he
Right.
used.
Yep.
So that he did that, plus we wanted to break it out between properties.
Well, that's a good idea, but I just was,
But it's not, those aren't necessarily fair market or even appraised value right there. There's a calculation that's used.
okay, got it. Any other questions?
Yes,
Oh,
what is
sorry.
compensated absences?
Verification.
Confiscated.
No,
Down to
compensated absences,
2005.
other current liabilities, 2005.
Huh.
He explained that to me, but I wouldn't be able to.
Compensated absences, I believe. And this is using my memory to recall this, which is dangerous. Is the dollar amount calculated of future payments that the organization would have to pay for sick, vacation, and retirement that is due for the employees.
Interesting.
Okay.
It's
if you had to buy it out.
yes. Yeah.
Well, these are great questions.
Yep.
Thank you so much. Now, that being the
I'll have Paul follow up with that one too for everybody.
There is a better description. Yes, that's pretty rough what I gave you.
very good. Any further questions on the treasurer's report? If not, we'll need a motion to accept the treasurer's report for this meeting. Motion to accept,
I'll move. Archie?
moved by Archie, second.
I'll second.
Second, Sherry, those in favor signify by saying aye.
Hi,
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Now the CEO report, Jeremy.
Okay, thanks, Jim. Couple things. So I'll just start with the Bombay factory. As Steve pointed out, as you know, we've had a serious company, seriously looking at the Bombay factory. And as I indicated last week, they ultimately came back and said that they did not want to proceed looking at the building any further because of both the cost that would be required to get it up to minimum occupancy and the time it would take to get those upgrades made don't work for their timeline. And so that's disappointing, but in some ways, after we received the building conditions assessment, not surprising, knowing their timeline. And so when we get into old business, I just wanted to make sure we start by having a brief conversation about what's next, because we can learn from this experience and hopefully it helps inform us as a group on what the direction we should take with the factory. And as Steve said, we have a brief discussion as a full board. We can take those notes back to the Economic Development Committee, come back with some recommendations to the full board on next steps. The audit is coming up, obviously. Paul and Maria have been working pretty steadily on a number of different things, getting ready for the audit. I know the auditors, well, I don't know if it's finalized, but they'll be here in the next couple of weeks on site to do their thing. And the audit itself will be published in March in time for the board to review it and accept it. So I just want to express appreciation for Paul and Maria for all the work they're doing, getting ready for that and making it. I think every year we're trying to streamline it, make it easier and more efficient. So last year, my final thing, well, I guess I have two things. Last year, we were pretty busy especially at the end of the year, with our reviewing and ultimately approving our renewable energy community solar projects. We had the two in Fort Covington and one in the town of Burke that closed at the end of the year. Right now, we don't have any of those. So we've had a lot of those over the last 2 years. We don't have any of those currently on the horizon. I'm not aware of any that we're going to see. There's some larger projects that we all know of that are kind of in some stage of review or development where they will ultimately find their way to us, but that's a ways off. I did want to just mention that we have just within, I'm trying to use these CEO reports to kind of look back at January or the month previous. Right. And in January, I did have conversations with several businesses, and I think two of them I knew about, one I didn't. And based on those continuing conversations, I do think we have 3 projects that we will be seeing financial assistance applications for so far this year. One probably not going to come until the middle of the year based on where they're at, but I know it's coming. And there's 2 others that are going to come sooner than that. I mean, they could be arriving in my email box this week or next. So just wanted to give that quick update that we do have some interest in some projects where companies will be seeking benefits through the IDA. Good. Okay, my last update related to the IDA is the chair talked about our committees. And my request is that at least the larger committees, economic development, and then the downtown revitalization and entrepreneurship committees, I would love it if we could set a time to have those, a predetermined time and date for those meetings. The board has been very interested in running a lot of projects and initiatives and things that need to come to the full board through the committees. And if we had a predetermined time every month where those committees met, it would really help the staff as far as getting into a kind of a habit and timeline for getting information to the committees. Then the committees could meet, discuss, make recommendations, and then that goes straight up to the full board. And we've found that just trying to get everyone's schedules together and getting meetings sometimes can be difficult. So if we set a time, maybe a week or so prior to the full board for those committees to meet, I think that would be, just have a standing date to those would be really helpful.
Is it, can I ask a question? Is it better to meet the week before the meetings or perhaps a week after the meetings, allowing staff to have time to prep maybe for the next meeting? What's your thought on that? What would be ideal from the staff's perspective?
It seems like a week or two before would
Okay,
be better, because then if the committee recommends forwarding it up as a resolution to the full board, it can just kind of go quickly from the committee to the full board.
okay,
I mean, I think that would be the ideal.
all right.
And, you know, another board I'm on, what we do is we have each of the committees that are going to make a report would send an email, a blast email out saying, here's what we've discussed. These are the things we'd like to bring to the full board a week from now. So I've studied that, and I also studied some other things administratively that are important. I don't know if Jeremy's ready to do this yet or not, but I did ask that members of the staff be appointed as resource persons to the particular committees they work with. Example being Rachel, doing all that work with downtown revitalization. And I think it'd be important for her to be assigned as a resource to that committee. Downtown revitalization and entrepreneurship would be a big help. I'm sure Rachel would be a big help to Sherry. So
I have done that. I made a list, so I'll send that off to the board of basically the staff lead. Doesn't mean there won't be other staff people involved with that committee,
Right.
but each one will have a lead, whatever you want to call
resource
it.
person.
Resource liaison.
Yeah.
Yep.
Great.
And one other guidance item. You may want to check, I'm going to let the committee chairs go ahead and determine for themselves among their committee, with their committee, when they would like to meet prior to the full board meeting. So if you want to get involved, excuse me, in those kinds of discussions with your committee members, I'd be very happy to hear what you have to say as soon as possible. So in other words, if you're going to have a meeting for the downtown revitalization or the loan committee, let us know you'll be meeting on we always meet on the second Tuesday. That's our IDA board meeting. Why don't we have something on the first Tuesday prior to the board meeting for the committee reports? Is that clear?
Well,
Yep.
yes, except as far as the Tuesday part.
Ask him, wrong person.
Well, I didn't say, what I'm saying to you is it could be Tuesday.
Oh.
If we're going to meet on the second Tuesday of the month,
Wednesday.
or second Wednesday, I'm sorry.
There you
I
go.
stand corrected, Archie, thank you. I only get confused when I'm given conflicting orders. But
does it just to see if any of us are paying attention to it.
No, I don't think so.
Well, that's why you're an officer.
Yeah, thanks. Well, and I have a first lieutenant who has a grandson right now.
All great.
Yeah, so,
Okay, so yeah, that is my committee report or CEO report for the IDA.
very good. Thank you, Jeremy.
If it could, I'd like to drift backward into the financial statements. We skipped over the profit and loss, or maybe I was asleep when we did it. But we are showing a net profit for the January period, which is a nice change for us. And I believe that is due to the municipal grant of $50,000 that we received and was booked in that period.
Yes, I believe so too. Then that's our budgeted grant from the EDC to the IDA.
Okay,
Good.
okay, let's move on. Now, old business. Jeremy.
Okay, let's talk about the Bombay factory.
Yep.
So we had commissioned this feasibility, well, a kind of a conditions assessment of the building that you all received before the end of the year. We actually shared that with the company so that they had they could make a really honest and accurate assessment of what their needs might be if they were to lease the building. And that assessment it's kind of a Cadillac. If you were to do everything, it's the Cadillac renovation. There's less that needs to be done based on different potential uses. I mean, if you're using the building for cold storage or warehousing, the code requirements are different than if you were using it for manufacturing of chemicals or something flammable, obviously. And there's also a dynamic of when you have an existing building and you can operate it as is a lot of times, but when you have a certain amount of renovation, it can trigger new code requirements. So something that might have been up to code in 1990 can continue to operate. But then if you went and made a substantial renovation to a building, you're required to update those and meet the new code requirements. So that assessment, they did their job, which is to give us a full accounting of everything that property needs. But I don't want to overstate that that's everything would have to be done in order to make it a building that can be used for different purposes. So I just want to put that as a caveat. But my hope was that we could just spend a couple of minutes where board members could share just their thoughts. I mean, Jim, Sherry, you guys have been on the board for a long time, and you've looked at these buildings for a long time. So you might have one perspective, and then Nate, you're relatively new to the board. You've never been in it yet. We got to get you out into it. Just love to have a dialogue about just your thoughts on direction, what we might want to use it for. Do we want to keep it? Do we want to renovate it? Do we want to sell it? And then Steve and I will take that and then go back to the committee and use that to help steer a direction. And then we would come back with, okay, if this is the direction, how do we implement that direction?
Good.
So that's I wanted to spend 5 or 7 minutes on that and see where it goes.
Jeremy, how big is the property? I mean, how many acres are there?
I think it's about 14 acres, 14, and the building itself is about 65,000 square feet.
Okay.
How did we come by that building in the first place?
It was sold to us I don't remember the year. Russ says it was the most expensive $10 the IDA has ever spent.
Really? That's pretty cool.
So we got it, purchase price was low, but there was a lot of work that had to be done to keep the building maintained.
Yeah, we run, I mean, I don't remember exactly it, somewhere, if we looked at the budget, it's, I think we're budgeting $15,000 a year
Right.
for
We've had it for
that
years.
building, just, for insurance.
Yeah.
Basic maintenance, security, things like that. And that doesn't, and that was a question Archie asked to me by email. We can go look back and get a more accurate picture of that, like what's the overall cost been to the IDA. So there's those annual operating expenses that we've incurred. But here and there, there's also been
Excuse me.
either minor or significant repairs or capital improvements. And Maria would know some of these better than me, but the electrical service got upgraded at some point. I'm sure that was a pretty hefty expense. 4 or 5 years ago, we spent, I think, about $15,000 on trying to minimize some leaks in the roof, which was pretty effective. It really didn't take care of everything 100%, but that was $15,000 or so. So we kind of have those blips on the radar where we've had some significant expenses, but then there's the operating. But I think we budget, is that about right, Maria? It's like $15,000 or so we budget?
Right, and then we have like security costs monthly, we have phone costs monthly. We have the special district fees for all three annually.
And the building itself was the True Stitch warehouse.
No,
that
there
finished
was a
goods one
Gildan shirt factory. They actually
day? Shirt factory. Okay.
produced the shirts. Yeah,
Okay.
t-shirt factory
Boy.
until they moved on.
Okay, and then True Stitch was the other building.
That was the other building, was a warehouse for True Stitch. Yeah. Since then, I think the only occupant was when we had the gentleman who built a net zero modular home in the addition. So we were able to figure out how to partition that off in a way that the code officer was comfortable with. And he used it, that 10,000 square feet to build some modular sections for a home. And, so he provided his own heat and he had the electric going, but that was about it. And so I think we released it to him for 2 years.
Saying money were no object. And we addressed all of the deficiencies that the consultant highlighted. It'd be interesting to know what that property and building would be worth and assessed for at that time.
I saw that, Archie, and I emailed, he's talked to us about that before, but I emailed Matt Borey to get his take on that. Like in looking at the market across the North Country, especially over towards Plattsburgh and Rouse's Point, and taking into consideration the location of our building, what would be a fair market sale price and lease rate for that kind of space if it were fully renovated. So once I get that from him, I'll share it. Yeah, but I just asked him yesterday afternoon after I got your email.
And the amount that he mentioned in his email was for an upgraded building with the improvements made. And he thought that's what the market value would be, not what the value, what the sales price potentially would be if we're to sell it as is,
His
right?
email was more on as is.
Or as is, okay.
Yeah, there was a significant
Big difference.
difference.
Good.
And, once he gives us some more, I mean, I don't want to, we talked about it on the phone, but I'd rather just get it from him in writing
Right.
to share with the board.
Good.
And it's been great. And this is Matt, just so everyone remembers, we hired Matt Borey and Alex Berry from CDC Real Estate to help us with this potential lease to this company, just because obviously for our own benefit and also to meet our obligations, if we sell or lease a building, we want to know what fair market rate is. And, you know, we have no idea. I mean, it's such a unique property and a unique location that we wanted to have somebody who is an expert be able to kind of advise us in that. And they are really knowledgeable. And
You do a good job.
whatever direction that we want to go, we plan to utilize them to help make sure we are doing it in the right way and that what we do works for the market in which we're located.
My ignorance is going to be showing here a little bit, but is there rail access to that property?
The rail line goes within about 100 feet of it, goes right by. But there's a small segment of land in between what we own and the rail line.
And there's no constructed siding.
There's no siding. That's the other. So back in 2017, John Tubbs commissioned a study using an Empire State Development grant to look at the technical feasibility of installing a rail siding at any of our properties in Bombay, because we have 3 all very close to the rail line. The warehouse is right on the rail line.
I do that.
We have a vacant property that's on the rail line. The factory is a little bit off. That report, and I'll write it down to share it with everybody because it's probably been a while since you've seen it, if ever. That report indicated that the best from a technical standpoint, the best location for rail siding would be at the factory. And the conceptual level cost estimate to do something like that was $770,000 or something like that at the time, but that was 7 or 8 years ago, or six years ago. So that would obviously have changed.
So Jeremy, are you looking for our opinion on what to do at this point, or?
Yes, just opinions and it just your feelings on things.
I have an opinion.
Okay.
I'm surprised.
I honestly think that we should sell it the way it is, knowing what needs to be done to it. I mean, it's a huge undertaking and I'm not really sure. I know we talked about getting, resources or grants or whatever, but is that something that the IDA actually wants to partake in and renovating at that scale a property?
Yeah.
So my opinion would be to sell it.
So,
I second that. How's that? And as you know, from our prior voting, I had said it then, we sell it as is, cut our losses. I mean, we're spending a lot of money every year. And if it's going to cost, from what I read in that letter, 500-some thousand, you really think we're going to get $1 million or even close to it for that building? No. So I say sell it and cut our losses.
so we're basically, if you look at two objectives, one being to try to gain some revenue from that building, have build up our assets, or put it out there because it's going to create jobs. What I'm hearing from both of you is jobs first, cutting our losses, and don't think of this building as a way for us to potentially make money, because we may not make money on it. We don't know. But if we can get the jobs out of it, it works for us to have it sold and put it to productive use.
Exactly.
Okay, so that's 2. Archie, what are you thinking?
Well, if we sell it as is, I'm curious as to what the use would be and whether it's going to create any jobs. But I think part of our basic goals is to not really own property, but maybe turn over property to someone that can perhaps, we're called the Industrial Development Agency, perhaps create an industrial site of some kind. I think that would be the optimum. Whether or not we improve it and try to sell it for more money, or we sell it as is, and the new owner does that.
You know, it's an interesting point because what the potential use is a big deal in terms of economic impact, because if it goes out again for manufacturing, we're getting jobs. If it goes out for distribution, let's say, with a railroad ends up putting in a siding and then is using, that somehow as a storage facility for its own purposes or something, that's good. There are not going to be a lot of jobs produced out of that, although the building would be put back into use, would be back on the tax rolls. So, there's some ideals in terms of what it could be sold for, whether we could actually achieve that or not, in terms of getting a factory of some type to come in there, or be used for distribution is a whole different thing.
One of the
Do we have
things
any
that-
idea there, Jeremy, as to what the ultimate use would be if we were to sell it as is?
Well, we've talked about that internally as a group forever, and there's different opportunities, but until you really test the market
That's right.
or do some really in-depth feasibility studies, it's just conjecture. But we've had interest for a range of things, some of which would be almost detrimental to the community, all the way up to the proposal that we recently had. And we've had everything in between. Now, I will say this, one of the things we've talked about is if we do sell it, we obviously have our own benefits that we can offer to a company if it were the right fit, and providing the right level of benefit back to the community that they could use to leverage to reinvest into the building, right? So we could sell the building to them, and if they had the right use, we could then look at providing them tax benefits to do it. But you, as a board, under our policy, have the control on whether or not the cost benefit is worth it. So if somebody shows up and wants to speculate, just own it and not do anything with it. Number one, you don't have to sell it to them. Two, you don't have to give them any benefits. But if somebody came back with a real plan that was going to use the building, make significant renovations, and put a lot of jobs in there, you would obviously look at that more favorably. But you never know until
You see.
you see.
So I like the idea of working with Boar, because and that's originally Mark Berry's firm. I think Mark's probably still involved. Great connections to the Canadian market. And if we could potentially bring a company in to buy it, and from that would be.
At one point, some interest in a Canadian organization and purchasing it?
Yes, and
Are they still?
That was a lead that they generated, but it never
Didn't gel.
went anywhere.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I haven't, personally seen the building or the property, so it's hard to give a true opinion. But certainly based off everything I'm hearing and the financials of it, I agree with, Madeline and Sherry. The longer we hold on to it, I think the further we're going to go in the hole with it. I'd rather just see us move on, put some money back into our account and go from there. I will say though, maybe for the time being, there's a lot of things going on, especially in that area right now. And I have a certain company that's been after me for weeks trying to find a lay down yard for them. They have lots of pieces of equipment that they use, ranging from tractor trailers to excavators, all sorts of things that they are really hoping to find a chunk of property. You said 10 plus acres, and use it as a lay down yard. They would not need to use any sort of inside of the building, which I think we've determined isn't possible anyways. But to use just the property itself to store their equipment. And this could be months, probably years, that they're gonna be up in this area doing work. So I don't know if that's anything that interests you guys or you want me to pursue anymore. But that's something that I've been dealing with for the last couple of weeks.
In the interim, by all means, let's make a connection and
Yeah.
see if there's a fit there.
And
Yeah.
it is, the building is potentially usable, my understanding inside, the tour that we took.
Well,
It's just that for certain things, you know, if you're developing a product or something, you're storing a product that has to stay dry. I mean, there's portions of that building which have leaks, but there's other portions that don't. So, you know, for equipment that's not gonna, you know, have tracks that tear up the floor or something like this, you know, somebody could use interior space there without much difficulty. It just can't be some kind of a good as a
Nate, let's
rot out if
let's
it gets
make a
wet.
connection.
Yeah,
So-
yeah, they're doing work from Messina all the way to Churubusco, and in one area they mentioned, they would love to be stationed at for a laydown yard is Bombay.
And when you talk about a laydown yard, it's just
Storing
outside storage for equipment? Is that what you're thinking? That,
material.
Something to store their equipment when they're done working with it, either for the night, for the day, for a couple days, for weeks, just to keep it there and have a centralized location people can go to grab it when they need it. You know, possibly having a office trailer there, you know, for the job, the project manager to be stationed at. Yeah, so just basically a lay down yard for all the equipment to be stored at.
okay.
Very good.
Good.
I do just want to point out when you're talking about selling that parcel, it is a brownfield site, and I'm not sure the amount of money, but a portion of money needs to be paid to New York State upon sale of that parcel.
How about a lease? Is that,
No, it's just if you sell the building, yeah, because it's a
What does that
brownfield.
mean, brownfield? What is that?
They had to bring it up to residential standards. I think it's because maybe there was fuel tanks in the ground or something like contaminants, right? And so both that and the warehouse are completed brownfield, but there's something that has to be paid back if it's sold.
So they've been clean, that site's been cleaned up. It just, there's an obligation to pay the state if in fact we do a sale.
That's correct.
So we don't have, good, we're not selling, if we sell it off to somebody, it's not that they have to do the work. The work's been done.
Right.
Great. Good, thanks,
And-
Maria.
So Nathan, are they looking to buy or lease?
Lease, they are not gonna be here long term. They just got here probably a month ago. And like I said, originally it was gonna be, 10, 12 months they were gonna be here. And just the other day, they said the word 3 years. So it's a lot of work going on up in that area. And yeah, they got a lot going on.
Okay.
Okay, we'll make a connection.
Very
See if
good.
there's
Yeah, I
anything
think
there.
that'd be thank you, Nate. Appreciate that.
Great.
Any
Uh,
other thoughts about this right now? I mean, this is exactly what I was looking for.
I'm on the edge of selling it. But, unless somebody came in and flashed a whole bunch of money at us to go in there, I don't want to bring it up to standards just to sell it.
No, I agree. There's no harm in leasing it a year at a time. And if you get a buyer, if the lease is up, you still have that option. But if they want to sign a lease
Yep.
for 3 years, then, it's better to get some income coming in on it than let it sit there. And we
Yep.
keep paying and paying and paying.
This
So
can always get sold.
definitely worth entertaining.
Good. And I want to go back to, we made a decision to have that evaluation done of the building. I think that was money very well spent because we really needed to know what our exposure was for this discussion about whether we keep it or sell it off and, what if we were to sell it off, what the price should be. So.
Very good.
Okay, the only
Steps
other
forward.
note I made is to get Nate out there on a windy, cold night. And we'll walk through so he can see what it's like in there in the dark.
That's my favorite weather, windy and coldy. Windy and cold.
Well, you live in the right place, my friend.
Yeah.
Very good.
Okay,
Uh,
thanks.
yeah, is there any need for executive session? I doubt it.
Yes, yeah,
There is.
I need to talk to the board about it's Tupper Lake Business Park, but so it's a matter related to the sale or lease of property.
Okay. That being the case, then I guess we can entertain.
Could I ask a question? I see number 11. Can I just ask a question and then I'll scoot out? Instead of waiting outside the door to come back in.
Go ahead. Ask the question, my dear.
Since a quorum for a committee is basically the majority of the number in the committee. So if there's 3 committee members, then the quorum is 2. Are those committee meetings publicly noticed?
No, not unless there's 4. Not unless there's 4 members of the IDA present at the committee meeting.
I think a quorum is the number in the committee. I think you base your quorum on the committee number.
The question is, are we required to notice committee meetings as well as the general meeting for the CDC or for the EDC?
Correct, because the quorum is based on the number in the committee. So if you've got a committee of 3, then the quorum is 2. If you've got a committee of 5, then your quorum is 3. So do you make those notices? I'm just interested in some of the work that you might be discussing. So I'm wondering if you're making those public notices. Like we notice every committee meeting because there's a quorum.
We haven't made notices of committee meetings, public notices. We haven't done that. What we're always mindful of those, though, is if we have a majority of the board.
But that's not your quorum.
That's a whole different thing. But as far as routine notice of committee meetings, we haven't done public notices to my knowledge.
Will you start? Because the quorum is based on the number in your committee.
Yeah, you're right. We haven't typically done that unless we knew there was going to be 4 or more.
Right.
And when I checked into this, I had Matt McCardle check into this however many months ago. And I don't remember what his explanation is. I'll look that up and forward it to everybody. But at the time, he didn't feel that we were required to notice committee meetings. But I'll find the email.
But
And
Donna,
it doesn't mean we can't provide.
Well,
them.
I know that we are required to notice committee meetings if there is a quorum of the committee.
and Donna, are you asking, this goes back to the conversation we had about our keeping more in tabs with what is being done at the county and the EDC and then, or the Economic Development Committee and you folks also getting more involved in monitoring what we're doing? Is that why you're asking the question?
Well, yeah, I mean, when you talk about Main Street revitalization and having economic development and, meetings, it might be of interest to attend a meeting, but more importantly, I think we need to determine, are those supposed to be publicly noticed or not? And it was my understanding that the quorum is based on the number in your committee, not the majority of a full board.
Okay.
I know at the school, we notice committees, at the county, we notice committees, public meetings. So I just wondered if those were sort of closed door meetings, or are they open to people to attend?
Yeah, we've treated them as work
But I also
sessions.
think
And,
yours-
yeah, Matt did not feel that they were subject to the same. Perhaps how the county does it is different, but he was of a
And the
different
schools, I
opinion.
guess. Yeah, so
But Donna,
different set of roles, I think.
tied in with the conversation that we had a few months back, I'd be very warm to the idea of you being at meetings that I'm involved with the Economic Development Committee, if you're interested in, it's, so getting a notice to you
Okay.
Yeah,
is different than getting a notice to the general public
An
if we're not
informal
required
notice
to do it to the
is-
general.
Right.
formal notice. is
Well,
different.
our meeting, we wanted to open up the chain of communication. So
Sure.
today happened to be a Wednesday that I was available.
This is,
So-
it's great you're here.
Yeah,
Terrific.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
You can come back, Donna, because we've only done the IDA meeting.
I know it, but how long is your executive session?
I'm hoping it's less than 10 minutes.
Okay, well,
We'll see you in a little bit.
you'll see me shortly.
Thanks, Donna.
You got time for a
Thank
beer,
you.
Donna?
Oh, yeah, I'm not a big drinker.
Uh,
I'm speaking for myself about the tenets of having the county monitor. Just so the board knows, when we had that meeting in Malone back in, I think it was November, about how to increase communication between the EDC and the county. They were warm to us showing up at their legislative meetings and economic development committee meetings, and we invited them to participate in ours. And we were thinking mainly of the board meetings for the EDC and the IDA, but it could extend to, committee meetings if there's something on the agenda that,
very good. We need to go into executive session.
sorry,
No, that's right.
Okay, I'm gonna create a, did we get a
We gotta have a
motion?
motion. No, we
That's
gotta
right.
have a motion.
I'll move.
I'll second it.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed,
Okay,
nay? Guys have it.
So we'll go into a breakout room, and so Donna and, Maria, Sherry, you'll have to just go into breakout room.
We could have a committee meeting if we had to start.
I will-
talking.
She's separate. She's on her own little joint.
Okay.
Yeah, you just gotta join them.
So we let, we told county to leave. Right? Good.
Jeremy, everybody looks like they're muted.
So you didn't hear anything
Nope.
that Jim said? Okay.
Nothing, not a word.
Thank you. Well, then expunge the record. I didn't say anything. Anyway, I've been invited to a meeting with business people from Tupper Lake and other interested citizens to discuss why a project did not get funding through the state's recent downtown revitalization program. I think they got so many names for them, I can't remember which one it was. Forward New York, Jerry?
That was the downtown.
It was
revitalization
downtown,
initiative.
okay.
Yeah.
So I will report back to you if there's anything to report at the next meeting.
Are you talking the decision for Malone?
No, Tupper Lake.
This is
Oh, okay.
related to the
Yeah,
Crossroads Hotel project.
yeah.
Oh, they-
Crossroads Hotel project was one of the projects that was recommended for funding by the local planning committee for the Tupper Lake DRI. But when the awards were announced by the state, the Crossroads Hotel was not included.
Yeah.
And so they continue to struggle with a funding gap to make the project a reality.
And that is a project that did we go so far as doing an inducement resolution?
We did.
Yes.
It was
Yeah.
2 years
So
ago.
we're in that project and so we got skin in the game on
Yeah,
this.
how much on that one for us?
Well, that was a pilot that we
Pilot, okay.
approved for that, but it hasn't gone into effect because the project hasn't happened.
Very good. Anything else in public comment? If not, we can adjourn this portion of our meeting. Our next meeting will be March 15th. And so do I have a motion to adjourn the IDA meeting for today?
I'll make motion.
Motion by Nate.
Second.
Here we go.
Second by Art. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Right.
Aye.
Very good. Okay.